Today's session is called What We Wish You Knew, a candid conversation with funders. So we're really excited. We have a wonderful panel and lots of juicy information. So we're really excited to go ahead and get started. A couple of house rules and notes. Please, 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 if you have an AR recorder, please remove it. It will impact the recording, the master recording that we're going to make accessible to all attendees and registrants. Another thing is that Phi Club has a no solicitation policy, so please no direct or indirect solicitation. And just as a note, today's session actually has a time of 10:10 as an end time. So please take note of that because we want to make sure there's enough time for questions and answers from the audience. So it ends exactly at 10:10. Okay. So with that, let's get started. Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Ndidi. You can remember that as Yes, Ndidi. It is my pleasure to join the Phi Club team as a moderator. I'm a nonprofit executive leader, fundraiser, and philanthropist with 15 years plus experience, including raising $42 million as a senior director of development. Now I lead an Okakpu consulting firm, helping nonprofits, funders, and CSR teams build strong fundraising systems, train grantee partners, and plan for sustainable growth. But I think that's enough about me. I'm delighted to get into to host our distinguished panel. So let's learn more about them. All right, well, let's learn more about Phi Club. So Phi Club, or the Philanthropy Club of Illinois, was founded over 20 years ago by Gus Wilmley, the co-founder of the Safer Foundation. The club is 100% volunteer driven, and our singular goal is to level the playing field for all Illinois nonprofits when it comes to access to funding to support the mission of their organizations and the communities they serve. We fulfill our goal by providing no-cost monthly programming to serve nonprofits with access to funders and by offering technical skills building for effective fundraising. The Philanthropy Club of Illinois is sponsored by Forefront. Go to www.myforefront.org to learn more about their services for Illinois-based nonprofits. Our Forefront staff partner is Susie Lee, who is currently behind the scenes, ensuring that we have a seamless time of learning this morning. Thank you so much, Susie and Emily. If you were forwarded the invite to this session and would like to receive Phi Club program notifications directly, please send Susie a note at slee, that's SLEE, at myforefront.org, and she will add you to the email list. All right, now for our panel. Iona Calhoun-Battiste. She is the Senior Director of Collective Power at the Chicago Community Trust, bringing over 21 years of nonprofit leadership to her role. She previously led programs at Thrive Chicago, the Obama Foundation, and United Way of Metro Chicago, driving collective impact strategies for youth and community investment. A proud Chicagoan, Iona holds degrees from both Howard and Columbia universities. She is also a professionally trained ballet dancer and instructor with over 35 years of experience. Nathan Stevens leads the Coleman Foundation's funding strategies for entrepreneurship and intellectual and developmental disabilities. He previously managed curriculum and secured $3.3 million in funding at Goldman Sachs' 10,000 small businesses, and began his nonprofit career at Center on Halsted. A board member of the Entrepreneurship Funders Network and a Windy City Times 30 Under 30 honoree, Nathan enjoys baking, working out, and traveling. Dilnaz Waraich. Dilnaz Waraich is the president of the WF Fund, Advancing Civic Engagement, Human Services, and Religious Pluralism in Marginalized Communities. With over 30 years of experience, she has led initiatives like the Muslim Collaborative Prizes and serves on several philanthropic and academic boards. A fellow with the National Center for Family Philanthropy, she also curates Inspired Generosity, a national storytelling showcase highlighting Black and Brown Muslim American voices. So You see, we have a really wonderful panel to discuss. So I would like to offer this question to our panel members. Why philanthropy? What led you to this work? Who wants to take it? Who wants to take a stab at it first?
I can jump in.
Go for it.
Hey, thanks so much, Ndidi and Phi Club to invite me to have this conversation. Excited to jump in with Iona and Nathan this morning. So, when I think about philanthropy, I think about like my kitchen table conversations and how I didn't even know that was philanthropy when my mom and dad would talk about like, giving $10 to their relatives back in India. And I'm a really proud immigrant of two parents that brought my sister and I to Chicago in 1972 from India. And we used to have these conversations about, giving $10 to India or giving $100 to some relative that was having open heart surgery. And it was kitchen table conversations and it was about philanthropy, but I didn't realize it was philanthropy. I just thought that's what people do. So it wasn't until about 2018, and my sister actually just said, "Why don't you call yourself a philanthropist? Why don't you just say you're a philanthropist?" And I was like, would she insult me? Because growing up, especially in Chicago, you would hear that word philanthropy or philanthropist, and it was actually not a positive term. It was a term of a white elderly individual, sometimes causing harm to the city. And I wanted to reclaim that word. I wanted to own the word philanthropist. And now I call myself a philanthropic advocate. And I walk in partnership with our partners. I make sure I'm in community with our organizations. So there was a way I thought philanthropy was, and now I want to reclaim and make sure that we all understand philanthropy really does mean for the love of humankind, and how do we do this work collectively?
I love that. Philanthropy really does mean for the work of humankind. It's very true. Thank you so much for telling us your story and what led you to this work. Thank you. Iona.
Yeah, my journey started on the other side of philanthropy, being involved in nonprofit. So working in nonprofit, I started as a mental health therapist for 5 years, and then moved into various roles, but always, you know, on the nonprofit side. And I quickly saw how much we relied on philanthropy for grants, for funding, for opportunities. And it was, it quickly became clear to me that there is a need on the other side to explain, the nonprofit side. I was at my first take with philanthropy was very much applying for grants, talking to program officers who I felt like maybe didn't really understand the community and maybe had an idea, but didn't really quite understand some of the core issues that were affecting community and that I was clearly in the middle of. And so when I got an opportunity to almost like to join the other side, I felt it was like my duty inside of philanthropy to really make this bridge between philanthropy and nonprofits, so that the mystery is revealed. I feel like there's a lot of mystery around how grants happen, where funding comes from, etc. And it doesn't have to be a mystery. And so I'm really happy to be on the side of philanthropy, to be able to eliminate some of those myths, and just to provide a bit more relationship in philanthropy, that allows us to bridge and really work in better collaboration with one another. So happy to be here.
We're happy to have you there. It's sometimes a mystery, but it doesn't have to be a mystery. I really appreciate that. It's a really great point, and we're here to unsolve the mystery. Yes, today. Thank you, Nathan.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Ndidi, thank you so much for convening all of us. I'm also grateful to be sharing the space with my co-panelists. What brought me to the field, I really thrive on being that person who can connect someone to something else that they need to be successful, whether that's funding, whether that's a relationship, whether that's access to knowledge, what have you. When I was at the Center in Halstead, which is the Midwest's largest LGBTQ community center in 2014, a program officer from the Polk Brothers Foundation came in for a site visit. I took minutes at that meeting and I was just wowed at this one person who came in, who took the time to speak to the community, to get to understand our needs, and then went to go be an advocate on behalf of our organization to steward resources. And since then, I was hooked. I went on in my career to work in direct service around small businesses before I landed here 3 years ago. And while I was preparing for this role, I was reading as many books as I could on philanthropy. Now understanding that most of my learning has been on the ground, but philanthropy's roots is in white supremacy. And this has been a wonderful opportunity for all of us who are in the field, who are on this side of philanthropy, to help break down those barriers, those walls, and specifically those power dynamics between funder and grantee partner, to have open and honest conversations to make sure that we're being transparent about our programs and our processes and what we're trying to accomplish. Any opportunity that I have to advocate for a grantee partner, I'm going to take it. And whether it's for funding or by recommending another foundation works with them, that's all part of the job. I'm grateful to be here, and I look forward to our conversation.
Thank you. Making connections and breaking down barriers. That's what I took. I love that. Thank you so much. Okay. I loved hearing, you all story and what brought you in there, why you love the work. So let's get started with some initial questions. Given today's political and social climate, so we all came in and it was one way, and now things are kind of changing. So given today's political and social climate, how have your funding priorities shifted in the last 12 to 8 months, and why? Anyone want to take that one?
I'm happy to start.
Go for it.
We've had ridiculous administrations in the past, I'll say. So this isn't the first time, but this time definitely feels different because it feels like democracy is at stake. And that pressure goes straight to our grantee partners. Also understanding that the current administration is trying to target philanthropy as well. And while those arguments may not hold up in court, the plan is to tie everyone up in court in the chaos and distract us from doing the work that we want to do. We have 3 programmatic areas: entrepreneurship, intellectual and developmental disabilities, and health. Our programs have not changed over the past 18 months. What is different is that we have changed and updated some of our practices. So for instance, we have an opportunity now, staff does, to make recommendations for grants that fall $25,000 and under to just a smaller committee made up of our interim CEO as well as one board member to be able to provide resources to somebody who falls within our current programs. This could be sponsorship for an event, it could be emergency capacity building, anything that helps us be as responsive as we can with less administration on our partners' end. Aside from that, we've also began really utilizing what we can. We're very lean. There's 6 of us when we're fully staffed. We also have 6 board members as well. So we've had the opportunity also to make recommendations to Coleman's board around some responsive giving for areas that fall outside of our 3 program areas. So last quarter, you can see on our website, we were able to disperse responsive grants to Refugee One as the city is working inside of a lawsuit from the Department of Justice on our sanctuary status. We're also able to steward resources quickly to the ACLU of Illinois and Lambda Legal, who are providing Chicagoans with help desk services, on the ground support to Chicagoans who are also in chaos themselves. So we will continue to do that throughout the rest of the year. And we are continuously inspired by some of our partners who are doing the same as well.
Thank you for sharing that, Nathan. That was really important to hear, and hopefully others will follow suit with what Coleman is doing as well. Something we've done at the WF Fund is we are national funders, and we'd like to bring in nonprofits at different levels. And what we also realize as funders, we're able to bring convenings, we are able to bring organizations together, we're able to have safer spaces during this difficult conversations that we're having nationally. So what we've done is in January and February, we brought our partners, grantees together and just said, we want to hear from you. What do you need? How can we support you? And having these intimate conversations with cohorts has been really powerful for the fund as well as the cohorts to be honest and be vulnerable and share where they are and what they need. And then also to now move forward with hope. So definitely we're living in a time where there's uncertainty. There's a time where we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or if it's going to be consistent from today to tomorrow. But it's also a time where we want to build hope within our nonprofits and make sure they support each other. And they're there without the fund as well. So philanthropy can do the opportunity of starting the conversation, but the nonprofits can continue these conversations. So we have a group of chaplains that we support. So bringing the chaplains together and making sure that they are getting supported during these campus situations, during the hospital healthcare chaplain situation, during difficulty that we're having with the chaplain conversation. Then we also fund researchers as well. So bringing researchers together and saying, what is happening in the research world? How can we make sure that we have more intimate conversations? So as funders, we're able to bring organizations together, but we're also able to step away and say, now you guys have your conversation, because it's really important to have a safer space where these organizations can just be honest and say, hey, I'm really dealing with a difficult time. And I don't want anyone else to hear this, but I do want to share it with you and build trust with you here. So that's what we've been able to do since January and February. And it's also been beautiful that the nonprofits have asked for more of these intimate conversations. And we've said, we're going to support you in this, but also know you can do it on your own as well.
Thank you, Dilnaz. That was riveting to hear. I want to say, so another question could also be, it's good to understand what you're doing, what Coleman Foundation is doing, what WF Fund is doing. For Iona, maybe you want to either share on that or tell us how your foundation is redefining impact in 2025. Like, how do you redefine that? And what kinds of results are you hearing or stories that are resonating with you and your board and leadership?
So I want to say, kudos to everybody. And I do feel like this is the time, this is the now. Um, and I'm really proud of the trust because we've made an unwavering commitment to still closing the racial and ethnic wealth gap. Like that has not changed. And even more recently, we just signed on a public statement with the Council of Foundations. So we just we signed a statement or a public statement around philanthropy as a charitable organization to continue to push for strengthening Chicago, but not necessarily doing harm to the democracy that we see is being done to us almost every day. So we are unwavering, and I think that is a really important part of the trust. We have been showing up for Chicagoans for over 100 years, and we continue to plan to do that with no there's going to be no misstep in there. So how to be an organization that prioritizes that. And I will say that actually, even before all of this had been going on, we have been prioritizing an understanding of impact. And we recently launched into a strategic refresh about 2 years ago to really understand how our investments are shaping and or contributing to closing the racial and ethnic wealth gap. And so we're kind of coming off of the heels of that. We have redefined some of our strategic approaches. We have redefined some strategic priorities, which are home ownership and home equity, income growth solutions, and community wealth building. And so we really take and use that lens to think about our investments, and to demonstrate, and be really strategic in our investments moving forward, so that we can start to see where the impact is. We know even with the millions of dollars that the trust has, that we will probably make this much of a difference because the problems are so large. But however we need to do that, being able to understand our impact and to understand that the impact is actually working, and helping and supporting the communities, that we really want to focus on, that is important to the trust. And I'm really happy to be here for that.
Well, kudos to the trust, kudos to the Coleman Foundation, kudos to WF Fund. I loved hearing each person, like each organization, what you are currently doing in this moment. Iona, while I have you on, can you give some, like, what would you say to organizations, race-led or BIPOC-led organizations, or BIPOC serving organizations that are feeling the whispers of, should we change our name? Should we change how we apply to things? What ways do you think they should kind of approach this current situation?
Yeah, let me make sure I'm not muted. Okay, yeah. We've heard that a lot. And I want to say that even the trust, we stand by the commitment of the First Amendment, right, which is freedom of speech, right? And again, our signing this petition also demonstrates our commitment to understanding the freedom of speech, right? So whatever your mission is, whatever the name of your organization is, our the legal advice that we have received, and legal advice I've heard in other areas and being in other places, is that, at the time, you do not have to change, nonprofits don't have to change their name because it might be race based, right? If that's your name, that's your name. And to date, I haven't heard of any organizations that maybe have had a race or gendered, name of their organization, have to change it, right? So that is a plus, right? And I know we hear about these executive orders almost on a daily, but I think we have it's really hard, but to take this measured approach, so that the fear doesn't make us move in different ways that maybe we don't need to do that. So measuring what is a fear-based response versus an actual legal response is the advice that we've been trying to help nonprofits take over the last, 5 months or so. So.
Thank you, thank you. And the speaking to that legal part, I think our forefront lead, Susie, actually mentioned this one organization. If what people are trying to navigate some of that stuff, Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights offers pro bono work. So thank you so much, Iona. I'll just throw out kind of one more question for whoever wants to take this. What are the most urgent needs or gaps you're noticing amongst grantees, and how is your organization responding?
Go ahead and jump in. And this is before the current administration and federal funding was at risk. We went through a 2-year learning journey across all of our program areas to understand, not necessarily the impact Coleman can make, but what kind of value can we add to our 3 respective programs. And what we heard continuously was the request for multi-year funding, whether it was general operating support or programmatic. And at the end of the day, providing those resources or being able to steward them in such a way that lowers any sort of administrative burden on the grantee partners, and we have found has only made our relationship more stronger. We understand that not all other foundations are able to do that quite yet, but it's a practice, and it's a wonderful tool that foundations can utilize if they're able to. When we want to be able to give our partners some breathing room every once in a while. Don't worry about writing up a 3-page final report for us and all the metrics and all that. We're not really concerned with that right now. We more so want to understand, where are you right now? What more do you need? Who do you need to connect with? And how else can we be a resource also outside of funding while we're in this 2-year agreement with? So, inside of our new strategies, specifically for entrepreneurship and intellectual and developmental disabilities, we've been able to get out 2-year grants, about $2.5 million, maybe 80% of those were multi-year funding to our partners that we've been working with for the last few years. So.
That's phenomenal. And I just want to shout that out. That happened during the pandemic. It was amazing to see the philanthropic community really show up in support of nonprofits, really understanding how can we really support you in the multi-year grants in everything. It takes a lot of burden off of an already burdensome situation.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I appreciate Nathan, you talking about like the multi-year grants, and it is so important that our nonprofits don't have to apply every single year, and they have a breath of fresh air and go, oh, we can rely on Coleman, we can rely on building this relationship with Nathan. So I'm glad that's what we're hearing today, and that's something we've been doing at the fund as well, is making sure that we follow trust-based philanthropy, the 6 principles they have, and making sure that we build this relationship, because we're in a world of loneliness. We're in a world of relational poverty. And how do we continue building trust amongst nonprofits and philanthropy and not creating that divide even more? So as we build trust between philanthropy and nonprofits, there's a huge power dynamic. So obviously that's one of the reasons we're here today. We're here to, kind of talk about what happens behind the scenes. But there's another conversation that's being had with technology. And I think about AI, how important AI is right now. And so what we've been doing is just understanding there's a difference between AI and the corporate world and AI and nonprofits. So how can we start providing resources for our nonprofits to be ready in 2025 and not be scared in 2026 when this becomes a norm in our society? So what we've been doing is just kind of better understanding by the Giving USA report, AI and nonprofits. So of course, we've started using ChatGPT as an AI tool, but how does it not just help efficiency, right? So this is definitely a point about efficiency, but it's also a point about equity. There are so many free versions of this tool, and how do we make sure that nonprofits understand research, brainstorming, and campaign development through ChatGPT? Then I think about Canva, and that's another tool that we can also use to help work with AI. So as we use this Canva, the Magic Studio tool, how do we make sure that all nonprofits understand, like, how can we put PowerPoints together and make them, again, efficiency use as well? And another part of AI that we've been trying to understand is the implicit biases, the data biases, all of these biases that we know as humans, but how are, these robots and this data that we're collecting through AI affecting our nonprofits as well? So if you're a faith individual, or if you're a nonprofit, or if you're a person of color, how do you get comfortable within 2025 and become a thriving nonprofit in 2026 to use AI? So that's a conversation we're having inside. And we're also thinking about a retreat that we're putting together in September and bringing together AI leaders in different sectors, talking to our nonprofits about this.
Well, that's a really great. Like, technical support is really important. Capacity building support is really important. And so that's good to know. And Canva ain't cheap, depending upon how many seats you have. So all those things are very useful for sure. I'm going to get the next question to Iona, since we got Stephen and Dilnaz, and thank you, Dilnaz. What do you wish nonprofit leaders better understood about the internal decision-making process at the foundation level? Oh, I'm not putting you on the spot. Is that on the spot one? I can give
That's
you.
very on the spot.
Okay. I
You
give
know
you.
what?
What's that?
You listen, right? When you don't know all of the, first of all, every organization, I don't care where you work, every organization has its own internal politics that you have to navigate around, right? And then you couple that with an organization having its own processes for processing things or doing things, etc. And then, couple that with when you're working or leveraging high net worth donors and so forth, it can be, very complex. And so I want people to know that the program officers inside these organizations go hard in the paint. We really, really do. I know my program officer, she goes hard in the paint for some organizations. And it's several layers of approvals that are needed. So you got to know that um, when a program officer or even me as a senior director, we very much pride ourselves on being transparent. There are no promises. I can get it past 3 stages of approval, but if the fourth stage of approval says no, I got to go back down and start again. And so it's challenging. And I think sometimes nonprofits think it's personal. And sometimes it is really not personal. It might be, the grant budget is done for that year. And so now you got to wait until the next year. I mean, another thing to know is that we as program managers, senior directors, start talking to organizations almost like a year before because budgets come out. And so we have to have in our mind, and again, remember, the trust is moving to very strategic, intentional funding. So I have to know almost a year before which organizations align with some of the strategic approaches that we've got, right? There's conversations. We are very relational on the collective power side. And so once we get you, we gonna go hard in the pay for you. And we're gonna, and even a no one year may not be a no next year, right? So organizations also need to know that. Like our priorities change. Right now, we've got the trust is looking to collaborate with other foundations around how do we infuse some rapid response cash to the ground, right? We've done work with Forefront, we've done some work with AMPed, and I was really excited about AMP because we had been talking to AMP a year prior to all of this happening. And so when the moment met, because I had the information, we were able to advocate pretty quickly and to align them to some of our priorities. But that information is a two-way street. And so nonprofits have to talk to us. And I think there's this fear around like, oh, I can't really share everything or I can't really be transparent. And that only hinders the process for some of us. If you're not really real with me and not telling me where you really are, I'm going to find out anyway when we do our due diligence. So just tell me now so that I'm not caught off guard, but know that we are advocates and champions, not only outside for organizations, but internally. We help get you what you need in those resources. And so we would appreciate, please don't beat us up because we go hard in the paint.
Don't beat up the program up. This was very helpful, I think. You made a really good point too about timelines and scheduling and things like that. And I think with the previous panel last month, the CSR leaders were telling us, even if you don't get it this cycle, maybe apply the next cycle, because sometimes it is the funding is run out. So these are really good inside perspectives. I want to take a moment really quick to shout out the Breaking It Down conference that's coming up in October. Many of us have attended, some of you all are mainstays. That conference is one that really is focusing on breaking down barriers and showing people helping passive entry into the funder grantee partnership relationship. So since you're kind of talking about the protocols and things, maybe we can ask Dilnaz a little bit about how can an organization get on the radar of a foundation that may have a no solicit policy. And this is especially when their work clearly aligns with the organization's, the foundation's priorities and peers with similar missions, and are funding peers with similar missions.
Yeah, thanks for that question. I also want to go back and double click on what Iona said, because please don't, like, it's not like philanthropy has a tree growing in the backyard and we could just pluck it and, like, hand out loads of cash anytime we want. There is a certain protocol. There is a budget that we need to follow. There is, board members we need to consult. So I think it's really important to understand that it's not as if it's philanthropy saying no because there's some type of relational situation, but there just are a protocol that we need to follow. And I agree with you, Iona. Thanks for bringing that up. As far as a no solicitation, it's also relational, right? Like, what you meet someone at a convening, you bump into someone at an event, and you're like, wow, I didn't know about that. Let me learn a little bit more. So I don't think there's anything wrong with sending an email. And then if you don't get a response, you don't get a response. But I would say continue sending those emails, going to events and, meeting different individuals and telling your story. Please make sure you share your story. Stories are really important. We're in a day and a time where, journalism and media is such an important conversation. How do we make sure we use AI to tell stories that don't usually get told? So again, it goes back to what I had said earlier, where I didn't know philanthropy looked and sounded like what I had a lived experience with. So now how do we make sure the philanthropy looks and sounds like everyone on this call? And we make sure that, like, philanthropy understands these diverse stories. And we also push back and ask, what are your implicit biases? And if you haven't funded us, why haven't you funded us? And can we develop a stronger relationship? So yes, we don't take solicitations, but yes, we do want to build new relationships. So there's no hard and fast rule on this, and making sure that you do your due diligence and are at events and having conversations is really important. I'd love to hear from Nathan. What are your thoughts on that question?
Thanks, Dilnaz. Plus one to everything that both of you said. First, I want to highlight the Breaking It Down conference. I'm only here because I met Ndidi there last year. I also connected with another gentleman there as well too. And I was able to help him get a new position at a foundation that he's starting soon. So I cannot underscore, as much as a lot of people don't like to network or force networking, it is always a great opportunity to get yourself in front of someone to tell your story. It's everything that my co-panelists have already said. We want to understand, is it a fit or not? If it's not, how can I also be a resource to you? If it is, how can we work to build our relationship to get us to a point of making a recommendation to Coleman's board of directors? Timing is everything. We do also have a very specific budget. I'm already starting to work on March 2026 grant recommendations right now. That's just where we are. Any opportunity that you have to put on an event and you want funders to go, send an invite to them. For myself, if I'm available to go and understand the background and the context, I'll make every opportunity to do so. Keep picking away. Eventually, it will pay off, I think. Do not also be afraid to lean on your network as well. Say, hey, do you know Nathan at Coleman Foundation? Can you please make an introduction? Don't be afraid to rely on your network. There's so much work specifically around entrepreneurship and small businesses where we are, talking about access to capital and thinking about that in a financial lens, but also social capital is what we really want to provide access to as well. We want to help be that main connector. So.
Relationships are super important. And I think that was the thing that I heard with both of you, especially, but I love the permission to keep picking it away, keep picking it away and leave that is super important. Thank you so much, Nathan. I want to throw one more question out here, at least on the grantee relationship strategy, for whoever wants to take it. From your perspective, what distinguishes a nonprofit that's truly grant ready or funder ready versus one that's not quite there yet?
Ndidi, say that one more time. You broke up a little bit on my end.
Oh, I apologize. I was saying, from your perspective, what distinguishes a nonprofit that's truly grant ready versus one that's not? What is that? What is a grant ready nonprofit look like versus one that's not?
I mean, you know, I'll just start off by saying a grant ready I mean, and you know, we have a lot of different funders on the call that fund a variety of organizations. But for the trust, you know, as all your paperwork in, do you have a 501c3? Have you certified your organization within our system? You don't have to be actively looking for a grant to certify and input your information in our system. You can do that tomorrow so that when you are ready or when you do see an opportunity on the Trust website, you're ready to apply. But, you know, I think a grant ready organization goes beyond the legalities of things. Of course, having all of your, you know, your current certifications and so forth in place. But you're also thinking about what the grant opportunity is, and you've read it, and if you have questions, you ask before the application, before you're grant ready, ask questions. What do you mean by this and this statement? We totally anticipate questions when we put out RFPs or when we put out proposals. We anticipate that people will have questions for us. And you will be surprised by sometimes the amount of questions we don't get, but then the applications we do get are not aligned with what we had or what we were requesting in the RFP. So ask questions. I think that makes you grant ready, right? Like being very clear on what the intention of the RFP, what the outcomes are, what are the requirements for funding, making sure you understand all that, you have that, and then you articulate that when you do a proposal. Um, to my understanding makes one really grant ready. There's just a few aspects.
Oh, thank you. Okay, you gonna say something? Nope. Okay, that was that. All right. Okay. So then I think that was really helpful. I want to say, yeah, no, I think that was helpful in terms of like making sure that that you're aligning with what they're asking. And thank you so much for that, Iona. As we're getting to the final stretch, I think we've already spoke to some of the other questions here, honestly, through this conversation. So this has been really, really great. So I would just throw out there for anyone, if you could give one piece of advice to nonprofit leaders preparing for their funding strategy for the next year, what would it be? I feel like I only kind of spoke to it a little bit, but you know, if there's one piece of advice to nonprofit leaders preparing for next year.
I have a good one.
Go ahead.
If you know, understanding not every nonprofit has access to a development team, has the capacity to do so. Some groups will contract grant writers to apply for funding. I think it is important that when you are engaging a grant writer, that they really understand the work that your organization does. You know, there can be instances where a contract grant writer who is flawless in their work and amazing, they will make sure to put in all the buzzwords inside of the application without really adding much context. I would, and with all due respect, but I would rather have an in-person conversation with the program manager and somebody that they are serving, and with the executive director to really understand what the work is, what the proposed work is, and what the needs are. There's also, and this also goes back all the way back to, breaking down barriers and power dynamics. I've reviewed applications where the consultant or the contract grant writer will just paint this pretty picture and everything's great and here's how amazing the organization is. And now give us general operating support. We still need to understand the need. We want to understand, get rid of all the fluff. Basically, let's have a real honest conversation around how this foundation can help you while we are working under this very specific strategy during this time in everyone's lives. So make sure that those that you are working with understand what you're trying to do.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That was on point for sure. So I want to make sure that the audience has some time for questions and answers. So there is a Q&A. It helps us kind of keep things flowing from the chat. So if you can make sure to put your questions in the Q&A box, or like the option for Q&A, that'll help us be able to kind of pull it from the chat. I did see I did see a couple of questions that I see for now from Kate Spellman. I said, I may have missed this, but my forever question is how to reach out to invite-only grant makers. Yeah, we definitely did cover that. Thank you. And I think it was like making connections, emailing, making sure that you kind of connect in email. I see my colleague Jessica is on. Did you have some items for us, or no? Maybe I missed that.
Questions from, or to address Kate's question?
Oh yeah, I wasn't sure. I'm sorry. You popped up on my screen. Maybe I got it confused. I will ask the next question that I got from Kafi Knox McDowell. What criteria do you take into account when evaluating funding opportunities that fall outside your primary strategic focus? What criteria do you take in account when evaluating funding opportunities that fall outside of your primary strategic focus?
I can start. That's a bit hard because typically, if it falls outside our strategic priority, we're not able to fund it. We do have other funding apparatus, such as sponsorships. We just completed a round of sponsorships. We met the need. There was over 350 applications for sponsorship support, and very finite dollars. So that was challenging, but that is a way um, to appeal for funding that may or may not be specifically focused around the strategic priorities. I know I don't want to speak for others, but I know at the trust, our grants and initiatives now moving forward really have to align.
Another thing I would add to that is like just making sure that you have a good trust building cohort that you as a nonprofit are speaking with regularly, sharing ideas and thoughts with, and also like sharing like, oh, I tried to connect with this person and I wasn't able to. And what Nathan said earlier, leaning on your network to say, hey, can you do an introduction? So if you can do an introduction, then someone else will do an introduction. So making sure that you're playing that game where, hey, we're all in this together and we all want to build something together. How do we build a stronger Chicago? How do we build a stronger network? And building it together is really important.
I would also highlight the wonderful resource that Forefront is, not only as a funder, but also as a former grant writer. I have reached out to Forefront multiple times for their help in doing research. So as a grant writer, for example, I reached out to the Forefront Library and it said, I need help understanding all the foundations in the country who have funded in this area. And I want to understand all the groups that they have funded, and I want to understand all the groups, all the other foundations that have funded all those other groups. Now you can get into a pretty big comprehensive list, but I'll say if it's not a match, and it's not, make sure that you are being respectful of your resources and your staff's resources, and putting energy into where it'll be hopefully most bankable.
Yeah.
One other quote I just wanted to share is a lot of times you'll hear this, and I'm sure many of you have heard it, but I just like to emphasize it again, is when you ask a funder for money, you may not get it, but when you ask a funder for advice, you'll get it. So make sure you ask funders for advice, because we do know certain things that, we would love to share with you. So make sure you get to know a funder relational, make sure it's a long-term relationship, and it's not just a quick, hey, I need this, what can I get it? If you can't get it, can you get it from someone else? But really just lean into the advice that you're asking for as well.
And I think that kind of goes to our next question from Andrea Clark. Are there ever instances where you may direct an applicant or help connect an applicant to another funder with whom their ask is better aligned?
I think so. That goes along just like nonprofits know each other and have a cohort and a trust. Funders know each other and have cohorts and trust, and we have these conversations. So if it doesn't fit our buckets of giving, then we really want to support nonprofits doing community-driven, mission-driven work. So we'll find another funder that fits that work as well.
Absolutely. I'll just plus one to that. And I will also say, we as funders all talk to each other. So sometimes if we're not sure about an organization, we'll go, Nathan, have you funded XYZ organization before? And he'll go, yeah, of course. They've been great. Or sometimes I've heard, well, yeah, they're kind of going through a thing right now. But so we're very transparent with one another. So make sure, again, that you keep that relationship with your program manager, really clear and so forth, because we do talk to one another, and that sometimes we can be influenced by what our colleagues are saying in the field. We really try not to be, I will say, as best practice, but, if an organization is really having some clear misalignment across the board, then we do hear and understand that. But we do, for the most part, love to talk and give recommendations to each other, because we all can't fund everybody. So when others can pick up or when people come to me and say, hey, Iona, I really like that organization you introduced me to, I think there's a fit, it warms my heart, because that's exactly what we are supposed to do in the field.
I just had a great opportunity, Coleman, through our entrepreneurship program, we had our first open call, and that lasted for about 6 weeks, and we had a wonderful response to it. And again, this was specific to our entrepreneurship programming. We did receive a few requests around workforce development, which was not a fit for the current program, as also with some youth entrepreneurship programs, which is also not a target of our current strategy. But what I was able to do was reach out to my colleagues who I know are in those areas, and I've said, these guys applied, they're not a fit. Here's their website. Let me know if you want to connect with them. I'm more than happy to do so. On the other end, just the personal practice that I was taught is that when a potential grantee partner who may or may not fit Coleman wants an introduction to another foundation, the typical practice for Coleman has been, let me reach out to my contact at the other foundation, say that this person wants to meet, and if they say yes, they'll say yes, and they'll do it, and I'll make the introduction. And if they don't want to meet and they know that it's just definitely not going to be a fit, they'll say that as well, and then we'll make sure that is clearly communicated to the grantee partner. Again, we don't want to be wasting anyone's time on something that is just not going to go anywhere.
I think that's very fair. Time is of the essence, and it's just if it, you know, alignment is really important. There's one more question I think we can try to hack at before we close out. It's from Don Abram. As a relatively new nonprofit, 4 years running, we've begun building relationships with foundations, but we often hear in this season we have to stick with our friends due to limited funds. Given the current philanthropic climate and tightened funding, what's the most effective way I, as an executive director, can make the case that our organizations should become one of those friends? And I think that so just again to shorten it, um, foundations are kind of like supporting the current grantee partners. So how does an organization that doesn't have that relationship but definitely needs the support kind of break into that? Take your time. It's a good one. And I'll just kind of restate it one more time. Given the current philanthropic climate and tightened funding, what's the most effective way that an executive director can make the case to be considered for some of this grant funding that may just go to current grantees?
I'll add to that where there's this African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I would say collaboration. So if you're new in this sector, then collaborate with other executive directors. Make sure you're having breakfast and coffee and learning from other executive directors of what does well, what doesn't do well. And then also do collaborative funding as well. So apply for a grant with another nonprofit that has a similar mission, that might have a similar project or a budget. So collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. Please don't try to do it alone. This is a really uncertain time. This is a really, uncertain world. So collaborate and be honest and be vulnerable and share what isn't going well, and also share the joys you're having too. And as you do this work.
Again, +1 to collaboration. You'll be surprised. We are happy to see when organizations are working together on a very strategic issue, right? Like it's the best. And so when that can happen, I mean, it really makes your application stand out from the rest, right? So again, we might get tons and tons of applications, but those that are really committed and have figured out how they can work together and leverage the best of each of their organizations to solve a comprehensive problem together. It's awesome. And, you know, it really allows us to live into being able to help even more than one organization with one strategic funding approach.
+2 to both of those. Every nonprofit and foundation is unique. For Coleman, across our entrepreneurship and IDD programs, one of the top criteria is around partnerships and groups intentionally working together to solve whichever systemic issue we are trying to solve. There are other funders. I'm not saying that this is a position of Coleman's, but there are definitely other funders who will say, there are too many nonprofits. And we will actually award grants to those that are ready to merge with one another. There's a lot of competition between nonprofits as well, too. So while also understanding that there are still gaps in services, there's a lot of competition that still exists. So we want to, again, just encourage those to continue to work in partnership, find out what your peers are doing, and find out how philanthropy can be a value add.
Thank you for that final point, Nathan. Collaboration, partnering with other organizations. And I know sometimes I'm gonna be like, we have to, but I think if you're just trying to start out and trying to make some waves, I think that that is a pretty decent pathway. So it doesn't seem like we have too many more questions. I think that maybe this was just so informative that we got all that, like folks feel empowered and informed. So before we close out, we just want to take a moment to thank everyone. And before you leave, we want to make sure that you know about next month's session. So if you give me 1 second, if you give me 1 second, we'll put it up. Oh, I think it's up. There you go. So next month's session, Build, Inspire, Engage, an impactful and enduring development program. This is going to be June 3rd's Philanthropy Club with Bill Leinard, and he's with Major and Planned Gifts with the Field Museum. So don't miss it. It's 9 a.m. Tuesday, June 3rd. Building an impactful and enduring development program. So we just want to thank our wonderful panel. And everyone who attended. We want to thank our forefront leads, Susie, Emily, Justin. We want to thank phenomenal Jessica Harris. She's a maverick in her own right. It's good to see everyone's faces, and just thank you all so much. We hope this was beneficial. The YouTube replay of this will be available and sent if you registered. And if not, definitely email slee@myforefront.org to get added to the mailing list. Thank you all so much. You all have a great rest of your day. And then for the panel.